Hey there, guys. All right, and welcome to week 95 of World War II, June 20th, 1941. French killing French in Syria. I have a feeling this is going to be another one of those weeks where things are happening and Barbarossa has not yet launched. My guess is the title of the video of Operation Barbarossa beginning is going to be titled Operation Barbarossa. I don't think they're going to keep it secret. Let's dive in.
Wait, French soldiers are fighting French soldiers. But
The
that's
French just
civil
love
war.
to fight each other. It is what they do.
But not in France? Wait, what?
There's one thing the French know how to
Okay.
do,
Yeah.
aside from being snobby. It is fight each
June
other.
20th, 1941. Britain has been marshalling its forces in North Africa, including tanks by the hundreds, for a renewed assault against the Axis powers. That assault happens now.
Now.
I'm Indy Nidell. This is World War II. Last week, Adolf Hitler issued a directive for sweeping future offensive plans all over the Middle East and the Mediterranean. The British made plans for a northern African attack of their own, and the Allied invasion of Vichy French Syria began. The Allied advance continues there this week. On the 15th, they take Sidon on the coast and Kisweh on the approach to Damascus, though a Vichy counterattack retakes part of Marjayoun. The next day, the counterattack retakes El Kneitra. Now, these counterattacks have cut the invasion force in two, and the two halves are unable to communicate with each other. On the 17th, the Hab force, which saw action in the Anglo-Iraqi War last month, begins an advance west from Iraq. They advance in two columns about 150 kilometers apart, and their presence at all is a surprise for the Vichy French. The lower column is motorized and heads along the main pipeline leading to Palmyra. The upper column heads for Aleppo, and then if they take that, they will head for Latakia, which would seal off the country and also help with any defense of Cyprus, 110 kilometers off the coast. The 19th and 20th sees heavy fighting outside Damascus, and Vichy forces cut off and defeat an Indian battalion. That battalion had taken Meze, but had been cut off from support and then captured by the Vichy French. British and Australian forces arrive on the scene as the week comes to an end. Another Allied offensive begins this week, Operation Battle Axe in North Africa. It begins the 15th with 18 Matilda tanks followed by Indian infantry and trucks making their way to Halfaya Pass. Before they can get within range to use their own guns, though, they come under range of enemy fire. Murderous enemy fire. 11 of the 12 leading tanks are blown out of action, and some even catch fire. What they've been hit by are the German 88mm guns, which I've described a bit before. These are long-barreled, rapid-firing, armor-piercing, deadly accurate, anti-tank and anti-aircraft guns that can fire a 10-kilo shell through pretty much any tank armor, even at ranges of over 1.5 kilometers. German commander Erwin Rommel only has 12 of these guns total, but he has 5 at Halfaya Pass, dug in with the barrels near ground level, so they're pretty much invisible. Well, after the lead tanks are basically all destroyed, the ones behind them withdraw, and 4 of those head into a minefield and have their tracks blown off. With no armored support left, the infantry cannot advance on its own. On the flanks at Hafid Ridge, the Axis had likewise inflicted heavy damage to the British armor. The British only had success in the center, taking Fort Capuzzo. British Field Commander Noel Beresford Pierce plans similar attacks for the next day, but Rommel preempts them with a counterattack, sending 96 tanks from the 5th Light Division towards Sidi Omar to attack the British left and the 15th Panzer Division to try and take back Fort Capuzzo. The 5th Light has some success, but the 15th Panzers fail at Capuzzo. Then, early in the morning of the 17th, Rommel sends both his armor groups towards Halfaya to try and cut off the British. By 8 a.m., the tanks have reached Sidi Suleiman, and the British at Capuzzo are forced to withdraw, or else they'll be surrounded. When Archie Wavell, in overall theater command, hears this news, he orders all forces to break off the operation and withdraw, recovering as many damaged tanks as they can. By nightfall, the British are back on the Sidi Barani Sofafi line, and their operation is a failure. They have lost 969 men and 91 tanks. The enemy's 678 men and 12 tanks. The
Okay.
British also lost 33 aircraft, but the RAF had performed really well, giving cover to the withdrawing forces the 17th. The high numbers of losses were because to give continuous cover, they had to patrol in small formations, and so the fighters were really vulnerable. Rommel lost 10 planes. The British think that their tanks were outgunned by the enemy tanks, and this is, in most cases, a fallacy. They are not yet aware of Rommel's 88s.
Oh,
When Prime
they don't
Minister
know about.
Winston
Okay.
Churchill gets news of the defeat, he is struck by the grim realization that for the first time, the Desert Army has attacked in strength and has been repulsed. So that operation stalls after just a few days, but an operation that is planned for next week will, in any and every case, last at least many weeks, if not months. Operation Barbarossa, the German invasion of the Soviet Union. On the 14th, though, at the Kremlin, Soviet Defense Commissar Semyon
So many things are
Timoshenko
happening.
and Chief of Staff Georgy Zhukov find Joseph Stalin seemingly unworried about the German military buildup on the border. They point out that intelligence says the German divisions are at wartime strength, and Stalin tells them, you can't believe everything intelligence says. Intelligence is right, though, and the Germans are making ready. On the 14th,
Stalin.
Theodor Eicke, commanding the SS Death's Head Division, tells his subordinates of Hitler's Commissar Decree that the war is ideological, a life and death struggle, and Soviet political commissars are to be executed immediately upon capture. There will be no mercy nor pity. By the 15th, the German commanders have completed their preparations. They await one of two code words, Dortmund to proceed or Altona to abort. On the 17th, they are informed that the attack is scheduled for 3 o'clock in the morning of June 22nd. Also the 15th,
Okay, so
the
actually
Soviet
the
commander
next
in
video.
Kiev, General Mikhail Kirponos, who correctly thinks a German attack is imminent, asks for permission to evacuate 300,000 people from the border region along the Bug River and to set up anti-tank barriers there. Stalin tells him no, because that would be provocative. British Prime Minister Winston Churchill writes American President Franklin Roosevelt the 15th, from every source at my disposal, it looks as if a vast German onslaught on Russia is imminent. Not only are the main German armies deployed from Finland to Romania, but the final arrivals of air and armored forces are being completed. We shall, of course, give all encouragement and any help we can spare to the Russians, following the principle that Hitler is the foe we have to beat. So the attack will begin in 2 days. It had originally been scheduled for May 15th. I will say yet again, though, that the reason for changing the timetable was not the invasion of Greece nor that of Yugoslavia. This time I'll offer John Keegan's words on the subject. The Balkan Campaign, often depicted by historians as an unwelcome diversion from Hitler's long-laid plan to attack the Soviet Union, and as a disabling interruption of the timetable he had marked out for its inception, had been in fact no such thing. It had been successfully concluded even more rapidly than his professional military advisors could have anticipated. While the choice of D-Day for Barbarossa had always depended not on the sequence of contingent events, but on the weather and objective
So many
military
words.
factors. The German army found it more difficult than expected to position the units allocated for Barbarossa in Poland, while the lateness of the spring thaw, which left the Eastern European rivers in spate beyond the predicted date, meant that Barbarossa could not have begun very much earlier than the 3rd week of June, whatever Hitler's intentions. See, here's the thing about the territory the Germans will be advancing across. Even though it's the longest offensive front line in history, there are no natural barriers facing any of the 3 army groups apart from the Pripyat marches, which they're going around. That's like 45,000 square miles of swamp, but that's not all that much, all things considered. There are some huge rivers, the Dnieper, the Dvina, even the Bug, that will have to be crossed.
Bug.
And you might think that would be an issue, but in France last year, rivers weren't that much of an obstacle, and that was in more defensible territory. The open steppes and plains of Russia and Ukraine are perfect for advancing panzers and infantry at certain times of the year and with some infrastructure. There are few roads or railways there, and the railways are a different gauge from the German ones, and the roads are unfinished dirt or sand roads. So in the summer, they're hard, dry, packed earth. But in the spring and autumn, when the rains come,
Mud.
or any time when the rains come, they literally liquefy and the land becomes waterlogged when the rivers flood their banks. Sending over 3 million men, thousands and thousands of tanks and other vehicles, and 600,000 horses across this land is only even remotely possible once it has dried. And now in mid-June, dry it finally is. And here are some notes to end the week. On the 14th, all German and Italian assets in the US are frozen. 2 days later, the German and Italian consulates are closed and their staffs told they must leave the country by July 10th. On the 19th, Italy and Germany return the favor. Also the 14th, 10,000 people from Estonia, 15,000 from Latvia, and 34,000 from Lithuania are deported to Siberia.
Oh.
On the 18th, a German-Turkish friendship treaty for 10 years is signed in Ankara. On the 20th, all Finnish reservists under the age of 45 are called up. That same day, the United States Army Air Forces is created. It is a successor to the United States Army Air Corps. General Henry Arnold is commander. And American arms are on their way this week to British troops in Egypt in 74 merchant ships, 30 of them flying the American flag. Among the cargo is 200 American tanks. And that brings us to the end of the week, with some Allied success in Syria, Allied failure in North Africa, and the final preparations made for the invasion of the Soviet Union, scheduled to begin in 2 days. I don't even really have anything to say now. I mean, I often use these conclusions to point out that decisions or actions will lead to a great many deaths. But this is so blindingly obvious that there's no need to say it. Starts in 2 days. Now, these regular episodes come out once a week, but 2 days from now, there will be a special regular episode to see what happens.
Oh.
Well, if it happens, they might call off the invasion. I can't see the future. If you'd like to see our between...
And that was week 95 of World War II, June 20th, 1941. French killing French in Syria. Soon it will really kick off, ladies and gentlemen. 90% of you gentlemen. Anyways. That's the episode. Hope you enjoyed. Peace.